Okay, so everyone, thank you for joining this conversation uh, entitled "Iran on the Brink: Will the U.S. Intervene? Implication for Israel, the Middle East, and Europe." And we are having this conversation, and I'm very glad to do it with Maurizio Molinari, who is an Italian journalist and leading political analyst. His expertise in geopolitics and international affairs is, I want to say, huge. He's been a journalist since the late 80s. He covered many conflicts in his career, from the Balkans to the Middle East and to Africa. He knows the US and Israel very well, of course. He was the editor in chief of the main newspapers in Italy, La Stampa and La Repubblica. He's a regular guest on the main Italian and foreign TV outlets, media outlets. And he's also a writer. He has written some 30 books on international policy, international affairs. So, Maurizio, I'm really glad to see you, to having with us at ELNET. Before diving into this topic of Iran, I just want to say a few words about myself, because I think I'm the new kid in town, as they used to say. I have just joined ELNET Italy, thanks to Roberta Anati and also to David and Tom, and I'm really glad to join the team slash family. I hope that one day we will be able to meet up as soon as we can, and I look forward to doing great stuff with all of you. I'm the policy manager of ELNET Italia, and I'm very excited about it. So, with no further ado, I would like to start this conversation with you, which I remember it's on the record, if it's fine, Maurizio. Uh, the the brink has begun, we might say, on the 28th of December last year, when the protests in Iran began to emerge. Unfortunately, there are thousands of victims. Uncertainty surrounding the exact number still remains. We don't know exactly how many fatalities, injured, arrests, and disappearances there are. But what we know is that the people of Iran are definitely fed up. So, what's your view for the moment on these circumstances, on these latest events?
Thank you, Matteo. Thank you, Roberta. Thank you to ELNET for this opportunity. It is a pleasure for me to discuss with topic with the friends of ELNET, and it will be, of course, possible after my opening statement, of course, to have a negotiation, to have a conversation, and to discuss any points that you will like to raise. As you may know, I just came back from the US. It was a very intense trip. I was in New York, I was in Washington, D.C., I was in Miami. The topic of Iran was everywhere. So let's summarize the US approach to the Iranian question in this moment in three main points that have to do with the identity, politics, and vision of the President of the United States. Let's start from the basic point, because we know that politics is always local. So the reality is that we are facing a situation, as Matteo said, that started on December.
Molinari is back.
Yes, sorry, to be disconnected. There are 3 points basically regarding the US. The first one has to do with the fact that politics is always local. So as Matteo first said, that this crisis began on December 28th. Then the president of the United States said very clearly to the Iranian authorities that they shouldn't have uh, caused any harm to Iranian citizens or protesters. We knew what went on. The number of victims is very high. So now it is the credibility of the president of the United States uh, in play. We all remember, and most of the Americans do remember what happened at the end of August 2013 with Barack Obama, when the then president of the US said that there was a red line for the Bashar Assad regime on using gas as a weapon against citizens. Bashar Assad did. Obama didn't react and decided not to do anything. And from that moment on, the credibility of the U.S. in Middle East collapsed. Advantage strategically Russia and then China. So since this is what happened at that time, Trump knows that not to do anything, not to react in any way to the bloodshed that happened in Iran, and that now most of the Americans are very well aware of what happened in those days, would have as a immediate consequence the drop of his personal credibility in Middle East, and of course of the political uh, credibility of the U.S. In the region. So this is the first element. Yes, I know it is very American. Yes, I know it is very local, but this is very clear in the mind of the president and of most of his very closest advisors. So this is point A. Now, then there is the regional approach that President Trump has to the region. As we saw with the signing of the Board of Peace in Davos a few days ago, the idea that the president has is to help to build a new Middle East, a kind of new Middle East where the US will be the main player, and that will allow the US not only to rebuild Gaza, but to use the rebuilding of Gaza as a political and economic tool to seduce and to push most of the global South countries to leave China and to join the US. The most important countries of that board of peace, from this perspective, are Saudi Arabia, Indonesia, Pakistan, Turkey, Kazakhstan. Without these countries, China will be not able to build her global South coalition. We know that the president has in mind, as the previous president, Joe Biden, had the IMEC project, the idea to build an infrastructure corridor starting from India, reaching the Arabian Peninsula, and then Israel, and from there going to Western Europe through Italy and to the US. And this is part of this vision, the idea that a Middle East where most of the country will be able to interconnect among themselves has to do with the enlarged vision of the Abrams Accord. We all know that the country that is most opposing to this vision is Iran and the Ayatollah regime. We knew that this was part of the strategy that brought the Middle East to October 7, that Hamas and Hezbollah and other terroristic organization and proxy organization linked to Iran wanted to sink the Abrams Accord. Now we are facing a US president that wants not only to put the Abrams Accord back on track, but to do something more, that has to do with creating in Middle East a geopolitical, a geoeconomical region with global impact, uh, being able not only to serve the interests, the national interests of the United States, but also to be a key element in the global new game about international security order. And here we have the third and crucial point that has to do with the approach that this president has to China. Everything that we have been watching in the last months has to do with China. Um, Capturing Maduro with a spectacular military action in Caracas meant to give the U.S. control of the Venezuelan oil reserves, 303 billion barrels. That if we sum this amount of barrels to the 47 billions of the US, also under US control, may allow strategically the US to have a say on fixing the oil price for first time in history. Uh, and oil is also a key factor of the US military operation that we saw against ISIS in Nigeria, for the simple reason that also Nigeria is selling oil to China. And of course, this is all about Iran. That is what, after Venezuela left, the most crucial exporter of oil to China. Um, why oil is so important in his siege against China for President Trump? Because China, yes, it is an high-tech superpower. Yes, it is the leading country on artificial intelligence, but has a terrible weakness, and it has to do with oil. Without importing oil, the GDP of China may collapse in little more than a year. China is a high-tech giant with this incredible weakness. And on top of that, if we pay attention, Trump invited also Russia to the board of peace because after Venezuela and also even if Iran will be gone and Nigeria will stop, so the only country left in terms of selling oil to China will be Russia. So if Russia will sign a deal on Ukraine on whatever conditions, and if Russia will join the board of peace, Trump will obtain splitting Russia from China and putting China in a very difficult spot. Why so fast? Because this is how this administration works, and because the president is planning a trip to Beijing in April, and he wants to arrive in China on that period and facing Xi Jinping and telling him, "Dear Xi Jinping, you have no more oil anymore. And if you want oil, you have to buy it for me." This is what Trump has in mind. In this global strategy that has to do about reshaping completely the international security order around the challenge between US and China, Iran is crucial. Iran is the country that, as we said already, export a crucial part of oil to China. Iran is used by China as a frontline country in challenging the influence of the US. Iran is crucial for the corridors, both by land and sea, of the new Silk Road. Iran, after the 12th Day War, have been rebuilding his military arsenal, uh, thanks to all kind of weapons and solid fuel received from China. So the reality is that this third element is the more geopolitical, geoeconomical, but crucial from U.S. point of view. So summarizing, there are three main base reasons because Trump has to do Iran. First, his personal credibility in Middle East, but mostly in front of the American citizens. Secondly, the idea of rebuilding the Middle East following and according to the American national interest. And third, to challenge China and to bring Russia on his side. So, in considering all these three elements together, we have been watching in the last 2 weeks, it is a big preparation of um, a military, a kind of military pressure against sin in Venezuela is suggesting us that probably Trump is not thinking about an intervention similar of those that we have seen in the past by the Bush administration, the Clinton administration, against different countries from Iraq to Serbia at the time of Milosevic. It's more realistic to believe that he has been discussing with his advisors a different kind of intervention or operation that will somehow succeed in putting Khamenei in a situation not to be able to run the show anymore. What they did, the Americans did with Delcy Rodriguez in Caracas, it is very interesting because the reality is that they prepared this operation for 6 months. So yes, the military blitz lasted for just 12 hours, but all the rest was already prepared by the military community and the intelligence community. And there were several very close advisors of Maduro that were already ready to take the reign of the country and to start cooperating with the US, mostly on the single topic that was very much interested by Trump, that, as we said, is oil. So we cannot exclude that this path will be taken in a very similar way by the US in Iran. That means that all this huge military show, the carrier that is arriving from the Far East, the number of military assets that are arriving in the region, all this is putting pressure on somebody inside Iran, basically telling to this person or to these people that the time is running out and is coming the time for them to act. This means basically to look for a traitor, to look for somebody that may be able to deliver Khamenei. And here, from this point on, of course, we stop with news and we start with speculation, because who can be this traitor is the big talking town in Washington, D.C. in these days. The president, Pezeshkian, because he is leading a different chain of command, very different from the Islamic Republic, that, as we know, the leader is Ali Khamenei, or a group of generals inside the army, the regular army, that historically never liked to be completely overcome and taken by the taken over by the Pasdaran, or a different minister or a leader of the Islamic Republic willing and being being able to somehow swift change the political path of the Islamic Republic in a way that would be possible to have a deal with the US, thanks maybe also to the help of Russia. What happened today, for instance, and this is my last point, and then I will listen to your question. Between today and yesterday, it is very interesting because if we uh, point and if we pay attention to which are the sources from where the numbers of very high casualties in Iran are coming from, they are from the government. The people that gave to Time magazine and to other media outlet numbers so high about the casualties that happened in just 2 days, 30,000, 36,000. It's a very big number. To remind something like this, we have to go to Babi Yar during the Second World War, or maybe to the Rwanda War in Southern Africa. So it's a big number. So who are these people? Why these people from inside the government are giving to foreign media outlet numbers so much bigger than those that the regime gave to the UN? As we know, the regime said that more or less there were 3,500 deaths, and now they speak about a 10 times bigger number. So, who are these sources? Why the sources are coming out? What is happening inside Iran? Is somebody starting to play against Khamenei? And is this the start of a bigger operation? Of course, we don't know. We have to watch out. But my humble impression as a reporter is that the time for the Ayatollah regime as we have know it is running out. Thank you.
Thank you, Maurizio. Very informative and instructive indeed. There's plenty of information, and I would like to remind, first of all, the audience that you can send your questions to Maurizio Molinari in the WhatsApp group. We already have one from Mark Sachs. I'll read it. Mark asks, back to the board of peace. Why is he assuming, you Maurizio, that Putin would sacrifice China for the board of peace? Trump cannot be asking people to join the board of peace because he thinks they would leave China. And what is the future of IMEC given MBS pivot?
Well, I'm not assuming that Russia will do it. I'm trying to explain what the president has in mind and his advisors have in mind. This is the big fight that they want to do. They want to detach Russia from China. They are trying maybe in a very uncommon way, in a very brutal way, but this is what they are trying to do. Yes, of course, they want Ukraine to pay the price, and this is going to be very heavy for a nation that is fighting already 4 years against the Russian aggression. But this is the direction that they are working on that. And we have what card they play? They can offer Russia to be back in the international financial market. They can offer Russia to be a key player in Middle East, but they may offer also Russia to be a crucial strategic power in Europe, damaging NATO. So we have to be very realistic and pragmatic about this heavy play that has been doing by the Trump administration. Will they have a chance to succeed? Of course, we have no idea. All the elements that we have is that Russia wants to stay with China. Russia considers China a crucial partner in changing the world order in its favor, and that the meeting that Putin and Kim Jong Un and Xi Jinping had in Beijing, speaking about never-ending life, was a message, a challenging message to democracies. But yes, this is the real game that is going on. Trump is still trying to seduce Putin in all possible ways to convince him to abandon China. The MBS, it is a crucial partner for the border peace. We have to wonder if the border peace is a way to convince MBS to join the Abrams Accord, for the simple reason that the phase two of the Trump plan for Gaza, it is starting today, thanks to the fact that the last hostage have been found and is back in Israel, that the Rafah checkpoint will reopen, that Turkey and Qatar and Egypt agreed on pushing Hamas to disarm. We have, of course, no idea if they will ever succeed in doing this or not. But there is a dynamic that may be used by the Trump administration to convince MBS that maybe the path to a kind of Palestinian entity in Gaza is starting. And so, this, politically speaking, means to have more ammunition to push MBS to be a main character, not only of the Board of Peace, but also of the Abrams Accord. There is no question that for MBS it is very difficult to join. He has a huge problem with the Saudi royal family. That means the public opinion, the so-called public opinion in his country. Many of them, they are very upset with him and they are against his reforms. So he doesn't want to risk the fate of reforms on the opening to Israel, but still, my impression, I may be wrong, but my impression as a reporter is that Trump didn't give up on Saudi Arabia entering the Abrams Accord.
Thank you, Maurizio. Now, Tom Flash is going to put a question to you, and then I have a question from Saul Brenner. Tom? Okay.
Hi. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, please go ahead.
Perfect. This is such a great conversation. I really thank you so much for the insights. My question is as follows, that it is purported that China has been not paying Iran for oil, but they are receiving oil from Iran in exchange for rebuilding infrastructure in that country. So that it's difficult to follow the money to see exactly the extent of that. My question is, if China has such an interest in the regime in Iran as it currently stands, is it involved at all with any of the efforts for fighting off regime change, or, in that whole issue that's going on with protesters in the street? Where is China?
I agree that this is a basic question. And by the way, it's the same question for Russia. Russia and China invested a lot in the last 40 years on Iran. Why should they give up? And if Trump is trying to negotiate, accepted by both, what about China? This very slow process, this very slow siege by the Americans to Iran may be also a way to have a discussion, at least with China, with what will happen in Iran. Let's remember the first statement that President Trump made after the capture of Maduro. Don't worry, China, we will keep selling you oil. So it's not that you will not get the oil anymore. You will, but from us. So it means to pay it more, and of course to give America a stronger stand in front of Beijing. We cannot exclude that this is the same approach that oil as a leverage to Beijing, but promising to Beijing to keep selling to them. Because let's remember that China works in a different dimension and see himself in a different time of history in 100 years. So they believe that history is on their side. So they know that now they are in a difficult situation because maybe for another 5 years, 6 years, less than 10 years, they will need oil. And then they will not need it anymore because in renewable energy, they are going much faster than all of the democratic countries. So from a Chinese point of view, why not compromising on Iran? Being sure that at the end of the story on artificial intelligence and high technology, they will prevail in the medium range time?
Interesting.
Thank you. Thank you for your question and your answer. Now, I would like to read Saul Brenner's question. I have been reading that the next week may involve some activities between the US and Iran. The US is moving naval ships, including an aircraft carrier, to the Middle East as we speak. I think you mentioned that, Maurizio. Have you heard anything about what may be occurring?
Absolutely not. But if we pay attention to which asset the Americans are moving towards Iran, first was the Lincoln, then was the USS Ford, then you had a lot of planes and ships, and then also we had the UK adding on air defenses. So the impression is that they are preparing a biggest and more powerful shield for Israel to protect Israel in case Iran will decide to strike, responding to any American action. We also saw the Americans to withdraw completely from the main military bases that they have in Saudi Arabia and Qatar, trying, of course, to take out of the picture possible targets to an Iranian reaction. Why they fear so much the Iranian reaction? And here we go back to China, because since the end of the 12 days war, China have been, and the US and Israel saw that thanks to the satellite system, have been sending to Iran an unusual amount of solid fuel. And with such amount of solid fuel, the evaluation that the Israelis are doing is that Iran may be ready to shoot against Israel a number of missiles around 2,000 that in one shot. That would be considerably higher in terms of numbers and also of entity of threat in comparison with what Iran did in the two previous occasions.
Thank you, Maurizio. Now, I would like to give the floor to the Chairman Emeritus of ELNET US, Larry Hochberg. We will have a question from Yossi Lemkovich afterwards. Larry, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. My question really, first of all, thank you for your support during this difficult period. I wasn't in Italy, I think you know that, and the general feeling of the public is not so helpful on these issues right now for reasons that you know better than we. You may want to tell us some of that, but we really appreciate, ELNET appreciates it, the amount of let's say, courage and support that the leadership of the Italian government has given Israel with all the questions involved and everything else. So that's the main thing, is to thank those in Italy who really have been so helpful. And I'm not sure after Davos where some of the other things go vis-a-vis the president of the U.S. You may have some views of that as well. But your outlook is so helpful in this time when the Israel bashers are so public, so I say violent, almost and virulent. So that's really what my point is. Just but do you see Italy being able to stay with this administration as things get complicated going forward with the Trump administration?
Thank you, Mr. Hochberg. I appreciate very much your question, and it's a very timing question. We have seen Giorgia Meloni, probably the Prime Minister of Italy, she's the closest European leader to Trump because they know each other a long time, because they met in many occasions, they did a lot of things together. And when there were difficult fields to face or problem to tackle, like the tariffs, like the negotiation in Ukraine, and also, lastly, about the Greenland topic, the reality is that Italy worked very much in getting close US and the EU in all possible ways and means. And this was very much appreciated by President Trump. Nevertheless, we know that Italy didn't join yet the Board of Peace for constitutional reasons, but it's also true that the day after that she announced not to be able to join the Board of Peace, the same Giorgia Meloni said that she will support the candidacy of President Trump to the Nobel Prize in a clear message of support for his leadership in Middle East. Aside of this element of, let's say, daily news, what you ask is going a little deeper. And my humble perception is that in this moment in Europe, we have two leaders that are ready to work with the US more than others. And they are Giorgia Meloni and Friedrich Merz, the Chancellor of Germany. Germany is a leading country in Europe because it's the bigger one, the richest one, is building the most important army. And most of all, Germany has shown since the invasion of Ukraine a very clear morality stand on social values topics, both with a social democrats chancellor and now with a Christian Democrats chancellor. Germany had never any single hesitation to say that the war in Ukraine started because of Russia aggression and the war in Middle East started because Hamas aggression against Israel. To be so persistent in defending these standpoints with different government in 4 years' time is telling us that Germany is rising as the main leader of the European Union, also thanks or because of the weakness of France, because of all the mistakes done at home and abroad by President Macron. So matching together the moral clarity, the political courage, and the leadership of Germany with the friendship that Giorgia Meloni has both personally and politically with President Trump, we may say that Italy and Germany may be in this moment the best partner of the US in facing all kind of crises, starting from Iran.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now going to the question by Yossi Lemkovic. He asks, what about Reza Pahlavi on Trump's plan for Iran?
I like very much the question by my friend Yossi Lemkovic because the reality is that Reza Pahlavi is growing as one of the main actor of the Iranian scenario. Yes, it is true that President Trump is not supporting him too much, exactly in the same way that he did with Maria Machado in Venezuela, simply because President Trump doesn't want to follow the path of the neocon presidents like George W. Bush in supporting democratic leaders and change a regime inspired by democratic values. But the reality on the ground is that Reza Pahlavi is much stronger and more popular in Iran than Ms. Machado in Venezuela, with all due respect, of course, to this great and very courageous lady. Why Pahlavi, and how do we know that Pahlavi is so popular? Well, first of all, watching what happened since December 8th, because the reality is that in more and more places, many manifestations, a lot of protests, people were simply shouting his name. And to shout the name of the son of the former Shah is not something common or easy, or that we can give for granted in the Iranian Republic of today. It is a danger by itself. Secondly, because Reza Pahlavi created a formidable digital tool. What I'm speaking about, it is a social network platform whose name, of course, is not known and has to be, of course, covered and to stay covered. But this social platform allows any security man or security official, both in police, in the military, in the Pasdaran, in Iran, to let him know that they are ready to follow him. And the fact that he created this platform, according to him, already thousands of military men in Iran pledged allegiance to him and told him that they are ready to serve to him and to his family again. The only fact that this element does exist, and that the flag that was used so often by the protesters is the same flag that his father government was using, is telling us that there is a credibility on the ground with whoever will lead Iran tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, will have to deal with.
Thank you, Maurizio. We have no more questions, so I would like to ask you a couple of things, and then if Tom Flesch agrees, I can hand over to him for his final remarks. Maurizio, you mentioned the split between China and Russia that Donald Trump is seeking to provoke. Just yesterday, I guess, there was a interesting military purge in China, where one of the generals, a member of the Politburo, was wiped out abruptly by President Xi. What's your take on this? And then the other question is about the U.S. pressure, maximum pressure, we could say, on Iran. The US Treasury has sanctioned 6 Hamas affiliated organizations, 5 of which sent funds to Hamas military wing. And it also designated the Popular Conference for Palestinians Abroad as a front organization controlled by Hamas. Here in Europe, we have Italian Foreign Minister Antonio Tajani, who stated that Italy is now supporting the blacklisting of the IRGC in the EU list. So how do you see this combination of facts, the pressure from the US and Europe on Iran, and these troubled waters in China's military?
So let's start from China. As we know, it has been widely reported, China have been building in the last 2 years close to Beijing the biggest military base existing in the whole world underground. The project, as the Americans believe today, will be bigger than the Pentagon. So again, the China is building a military base bigger than the Pentagon underground, close to Beijing. The evaluation, the lowest profile evaluation by the US of this project is that China is preparing itself to have a nuclear war against the West or against the US. We have always been watching China being more and more aggressive in the South China Sea, not only against Taiwan, but against the Philippines. And the way, if you may be interested in this topic, we may have a second appointment on this, but it's really fascinating. The way that they are aggressive, for instance, against the Philippines, makes us think a lot because they don't use military ships as we could imagine. So they don't use military ship to move them around everywhere to put the enemies or the adversaries or the rivals under pressure, but they build more and more big military ships, 8,000 tons, and they put them in territorial waters belonging other countries. If there is anyone knowing the Chinese game of chess that is called Go, this is the same way that they play chess. When they play chess, it's not because they want to gain some kind of ground or tassel, but because they occupy one piece of the place of the game and they don't move. The game is to occupy and not move. So this is putting the US under very heavy pressure because when you have dozens of big ships in the waters of the Philippines or Vietnam or Malaysia, they don't move. What do you do? What
Yeah,
do you do? You
exactly.
sink them? You shot at them? What do you do? So and you don't have enough military ships to do the same because they build more and faster. So why I'm telling you all of this? Because China has a long-term strategy to put the US and their allies under heavy pressure. To be successful in this strategy, she has to rely on a group of generals that he really trusts. The problem is that what he watched in Russia at the moment of the invasion of Ukraine is that the Russian generals lied to Putin. And they sold to Putin a military credibility that they didn't have because of corruption, that they were taking money for them and not investing the money in building the modern army that Putin believed that he had. So the nightmare of Xi is again to think that he has an army that actually doesn't exist because some of his general maybe they are taking the money away from themselves. Now, in this case, Beijing is saying that this very top general was basically selling nuclear secret to the US. Again, the topic here is money, is corruption. Whoever studied the communist countries knows that corruption is the basic weakness that they have. So I believe that the removal of this general is telling us that on one hand, she is very much serious in building his army to be able to rival the US, and secondly, worries a lot about the possible that bribery and scandals and corruption will weaken this scenario. Uh, Regarding the decision taken by the administration on several pro-Hamas groups, why or the moving decision by several European governments, including Italy, to ban the Pasdaran, I believe, we have to look at this process together with what Israel is doing around its borders. The buffer zones that Israel created and is defending aggressively every single day in southern Lebanon, southern Syria, and at the border with Gaza, basically proxies of Iran. So working for the Islamic Republic cannot sleep in peace. They have to defend themselves all the time. We are not going back to the situation pre-October 7 when these proxies were able to organize all kind of plans and Israel and the US were watching in silence until they were deciding to strike. Now we moved, or well, US and Israel moved from deterrence to preemption. And this is happening militarily in the Middle East and politically on the front that Europe shares with Iran. And in this frame, it is also interesting to note that this morning, the US administration asked Bolivia, the new government in La Paz, to expel all the Iranian spies that they have, Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Jihad Islamic. So this means that the offensive that the Trump administration and its allies are leading against the Islamic Republic is not only on the territory of Iran, but wherever the strategic interests of the Islamic Republic are.
Thank you very much, Maurizio. Thank you. Thanks a lot. From deterrence to prevention. That's very interesting.